impressed. Okay, so are you ready?
Yes.
All right, today we are going to talk about We All Ask Who Am I? This is another one of those themes where it's going to cross different types of art, different styles, different years. So the thing they have in common is the element of the picture rather than the style or the age of the picture or even the location where it was made. We're going to start with this one. This is called Summertime, and it's by Romare Bearden. This is from 1967, which means it's one of our more recent prints. And let's see, if this Bearden was born in North Carolina in Charlotte. He attended school in Pittsburgh and New York, so he's one of our American artists, which is nice to see. And this picture is a collage. So it has different things, different items, different pieces torn from different other pictures or places. You can use scraps of paper. This pink here is a background piece. It might be just a solid pink piece of paper. And by overlaying these types of picture pieces together, you make something new. Kids love doing collages. And if you are building up your stash, I'm sure that you can find some pictures to include in your hoard. And then when you do a masterwork session, you can bring some of those magazines in, and the kids can make their own collages. So don't ever overlook this particular project idea. Doing a collage is always a hit. Glue sticks are your friend. So when we look at this, we all ask, who am I? Now this is an interesting picture. It's got little bits and people in it. Here's a hand. We don't know who that person is, except it's like kind of a male hand. So a male who's pretty much off screen. The main character is this young lady here. Who is she? Well, she's obviously African American. She's got somebody's ear and two other eyes, and so she's made up of a little bit of people. Now, particularly for African Americans in the 60s, when this was made, there was a trying to fit in and become a recognized part of society. Civil rights were just happening. It was just being born. So we don't look at this so much as a black person so much as black people. This is a representative of the black culture, the African American society, staking their claim and demanding their rights as it should be. So when we look at her made up of a lot of people, she really is. She's a symbol. She represents a lot of people. So when we all ask, who am I, it might even be saying, who are we? And even though we're looking at one person here, she's really a we rather than a me. And then we see somebody else up here who's pretty much inside a window. It suggests the window here, like they're in a building looking down. And again, this is definitely a black community. It's another African American person looking out of the window. And maybe that's the people who are not, at this time, remember there's a lot going on, and maybe that's the person who, although they're not marching in the streets like this me-we character, they still are very supportive and interested. They're peeking out, they're not hiding. They're taking a look and trying to be supportive of the people who are marching or moving or fighting for their rights. So when she's looking, the we-me person, the main character here, is also part of this person. She's representing not only the people who are in the streets, but the people who aren't in the streets as well. There was so much going on, and it would be a great activity to have this picture during Black Awareness Month. Would be fabulous. That's a few months away from right now, but you can still bring up some of the ideas and thoughts and things about that. So this would be a really exciting piece, especially if the teacher is covering anything related to social history. Okay, this piece is called Self-Portrait. Great name. It's by Max Beckmann. It's from 1944. Max Beckmann was a German expressionist painter, and when we look at this is very much an expressionist piece. It is in the German style, although I wouldn't expect the kids to know that. So when we talk expressionism, what are we saying? Expressionism is not a photographic style, so it's not realistic. In other words, by realism I mean it looks like a photo. We don't see people with these kind of rough edges or unusual coloration with, and especially the contrast in the face. But when we talk about expressionism, it's the artist looking from the inside out. We're seeing what is inside the artist. Not to be confused with impressionism, where that's from the outside in and we're getting what the artist sees. This is what the artist is. And so it's a self-portrait in two ways. It's a self-portrait because it's a picture of himself. But it's also a self-portrait because it's an expressionist piece. So we're seeing what's outside of him and what's inside of him at the same time. So this is an example of how he sees himself. Now, when I look at this picture, I see somebody who's probably fairly sophisticated, not necessarily wealthy, but certainly not poor either. Just somebody who probably knows a lot of people and he seems to me to have a bit of a social, even though he's the only one in the picture, he kind of has that air about him of somebody who likes to get around and meet people. So when I look at this picture, that's what I pick up. Is that what he's trying to show? Hard to say. But we have, because it's expressionistic, we're getting a glimpse of him both on the inside and on the outside.
The kids will probably pick up that he doesn't look particularly happy.
Yeah, he doesn't look particularly happy in this picture. And given how long it takes to paint a self-portrait, he was unhappy for many hours while he was painting this. So I wonder if it says anything about why he was not happy in this. No. But it tells us how he wants us to think of him. So it's a very interesting two-way conversation going on. We're telling him what we see, we're responding to that, but he's also telling us what he wants us to see.
Seriousness.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Maxie's gonna. All right, this piece is called Cafe, and it's by Tsuguharu Fujita. Now, Fujita was a Japanese artist. He was trained in Japan, painted in the Japanese style, which we have discussed in some of the other series. And then he moved to France. Now, art in Japan and art in France were about as opposite as they could be. By the way, this picture, he lived from 1866 to 1967. So this piece was done when there was an awful lot going on in art in France. The entire Impressionist movement, oh my gosh, he lived through that. He lived through all the issues going on with World War II, the Rider movement, the Bridge movement, the Bauhaus movement, all these different things that were happening in Europe at the time. And you can actually see a lot of that. This doesn't look like your basic Oriental piece, but it has a lot of Oriental elements. For example, the young lady is very pale. And in the Orient, when they paint pictures, historically, they were very, very pale pictures. She's kind of got that flat affect, that flat sort of face that we don't typically see with Western pictures. But there's a lot going on in this picture. There's somebody in the background, there's a sign, there's a window, there's a street. This picture would tell a story. And as we discussed in Oriental art, they're very regimented in what's included in the paintings. The paintings in the Orient, especially in Japan, are part of the religious movement there. They're part of the Shinto or Buddhist movements. And they have guidelines similar to Feng Shui to tell about what's included and where it's placed, and that is all significant. So this is not a typical Oriental picture because it doesn't have that. The heavy Western influence is real visible in this picture. So why is it included in the "we all ask, who am I" category? Well, this young lady obviously is being very pensive. She's sitting down having a glass of wine, and she's got an ink bottle out. It looks like she's trying to write something, either a letter or a story, some such thing. She looks deeply lost in thought. I don't know if she's planning on what she's going to write next, or is she responding? Maybe she's breaking up with somebody. Maybe she's writing a letter to somebody who's over in the war. We don't know. There's something going on in her life that's long distance, and we can assume that by the fact that she's writing something down. Interesting looking lady, though, isn't she?
It almost looks like she's in mourning or something.
She's wearing black. She could be. She could be.
I mean, 1949 in Europe.
That's right. There was a lot going on. Fujita lived through some of the most interesting times in Western Europe. And, you know, he left Japan to be there. So that says something. Let's see if there's anything about this picture in particular. Nope, nothing that we haven't already said. It's one of my favorite pictures. I really enjoy this, and I never get tired of looking at it. Every time I look at it, I see something else. So it's just a really fascinating piece. And I love the cross between the Oriental and the Western, the two different styles. I'm not one for Oriental art per se, but I do like the way that Fujita blends it.
What are some other characteristics of Oriental art?
Oh, that's a whole nother section.
Well, but I mean, like in this particular picture, besides the pale and the flatness.
There's
Well-
always something living and something not living.
Yep, in Oriental art, there's usually something living, there's something not living,
Okay.
and there's something that doesn't move.
Okay.
So in this particular piece, you know, maybe you could stretch that and say the building doesn't move.
Right.
And then beyond it, we see other people, so that might be the other something living in addition to she herself. One thing is that while a lot of the Oriental pieces capture nature, they don't usually capture people. There's not a whole lot of paintings of other than certain specific
I see.
categories of paintings. There's not a whole lot of pictures of people.
Okay.
So to have a portrait like this is rare.
It's usually like a bull in a tree.
Yeah, and then they call it bull with tree. Like cafe. Okay, there's another thing. Just the obvious naming convention. Very Oriental. You could have called it girl with wine and ink. Okay, this is another one that we all like. This is, of course, by Van Gogh, and it's his bedroom at Arles. This is one the kids love because they all sleep somewhere. Arles, that's the city he lived in, A-R-L-E-S. And I might be pronouncing it wrong because I never studied French. So most of the kids have, if it's not their bedroom, they have some safe place. And kids love to have a place that is their own, where they feel safe, protected, secluded sometimes. And this was what this was for Van Gogh. This is Van Gogh's bedroom, but it's his sanctuary. This is his hideaway place. The world was not kind to him. He had a few issues that made it very difficult for him to deal with people. And when he went to his room, it was safe and secure. So he is sharing with the viewer the deepest secrets of his soul right now. This is his safe place, and he's inviting us all in. And that's pretty special. With the kids, if you're doing this, you can have them, there's two things we can do with this, and maybe blend them together. One of them is to teach them that when we look at a painting, nothing in the painting is accidental. It's not like somebody photobombed it. Everything that's in there is there because the artist put it there. And we can tell a lot about a person or an artist by what's included in the painting. So when we look at this picture of Van Gogh's bedroom, we can learn a lot about Van Gogh. For one thing, he was orderly. This is a very tidy room. He also didn't seem to have a lot of possessions. Maybe he just wasn't that into things and items. Or maybe they just weren't part of his sanctuary. He does have a lot of art on the wall for one little tiny bedroom, and that tells us how important art was to him. I wonder if they're pictures he did or pictures that his friends did, because he did have a lot of artist friends, especially in that time and place. The other thing is that he does have a couple chairs in there. Now, maybe he uses a chair to sit down when he puts his shoes on. That's quite likely. But it also tells us that he likes to have company. And maybe he would invite them into his sanctuary, into his safe place. So by looking at what is included in a painting, we can learn a lot about the person who painted it. The other thing to do with the kids, and this is a really nice activity, is to have them draw a picture of their bedroom or their favorite place that they consider their secret safe spot. Maybe it's a tree house, maybe it's a basement, maybe it's a fort that they build with cushions, or maybe it is their bedroom. And have them draw a little picture of it.
The one guy in the picture does look like Van Gogh, though, doesn't he? Like up on the...
Here? It looks like a young Van Gogh, doesn't it? It could be his parents, for all I know.
That's true.
I'd have to assume at least one was a redhead. On a side note, if you've ever seen the Doctor Who episode with Vincent, they actually have this room made up as part of the set, and there's a scene that takes place in there, and it's just so cool to go, oh, I know that room, which is exactly what he wants us to do, to say, I know that, I've seen that, I know that room. And it is the best episode of Doctor Who, by the way. Have Kleenex.
Never seen that.
Oh my gosh, it's on, you can get it on YouTube. Just Google Doctor Who Vincent and watch the episode. So many feels. Speaking of Vincent van Gogh, here he is. This is a self-portrait with bandaged ear. It's from 1889. This is his last self-portrait. He did many, young, old, and so on. And everyone's going to want to know about the ear, always about the ear. He was having an episode, having a bit of a seizure, and grabbed a nearby knife, and he was intending to damage his friend, Suzanne, who was over, and instead accidentally cut off only part of his ear, like an earlobe, okay? It's not like, no hole in the side of his head, but he did have a little mishap. So, infamous as it is, he painted a picture of himself with the darn head bandaged, of all things.
Must have been right reflective of it. Is that an Asian painting behind him?
Don't know.
That's okay.
It's a good question. It does look, it looks like women in kimonos, doesn't it?
It's not
So I don't know. That's an interesting thought. Interesting that he just sort of hinted at it. He didn't spend a lot of time on that, but we can identify what it is.
See, like a mountain out there.
Yeah, not too many things, other than certain genres, have Oriental. I have pictures of people.
So what do you think, like in this Who Am I, what do you think he's trying to,
That's a good question.
like, do you think he's trying to document, I'm a little crazy?
I think he's trying to document that he's wounded. And it's not necessarily just the physical wounding of the ear. It's pretty well established at this point that Van Gogh did have some mental health issues. He suffered from depression. He might have been bipolar as well. He may have been schizophrenic. It would be interesting to see if we could grab some DNA somehow and learn more about the man. But he did have issues. He was outcast from his community. And I think that when he paints a picture like this, it's really obvious that he's wounded physically. But we need to look beyond that and say that he was deeply wounded psychologically as well. And if he thinks that a person who is wounded is worthy of being a model for art, a centerpiece of an art piece, then he's giving that person value. So maybe he's trying to teach us about the value of being a human being, wounded or not. And they will all ask about the ear.
What kind of language might you use in a kindergarten class? I wonder.
Good question. Good question.
Which kindergarten class are you? Or do you want to do this one?
I mean, I could, or I could do my
If you want to do it,
daughter's.
I could help. That's fine. We got 4. I don't know how we know who's doing it.
Oh, you have to figure
Somebody
it out.
can do Lemke's class, because we are absolutely without a volunteer. She had to bow out.
Oh, dear.
So if we could spread the wealth, that would be amazing too.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one is called Clown with a Black Wig. It's by Walt Kuhn. He lived from 1880 to 1949. And this piece is from 1930. He's actually an American artist, even though he has a German name. And this is kind of a sad clown. You can almost see his face underneath it. You kind of realize that what he shows is not necessarily what he is. Let's see what it says here.
Do we know if that's a man?
He kind of has a man's jawline. I am making assumptions. It says, under here it says the man underneath the makeup, but that could be man in a general sense. He does have rather broad shoulders, and he's got that nice square jawline, more masculine than feminine. So I'm going to assume male, but, we don't know for sure. And of course, that's part of being a clown, isn't it? You don't know for sure what's underneath the mask or what's underneath the makeup and the costume. People tend to think of clowns as being more on the happy side, but you still are a person underneath that, and it's hard to be a happy clown if you're a sad person. It does tend to show, and I think this is an example of that, to show that what we are on the inside doesn't always match what was on the outside, which is really in stark contrast to the piece we just saw by Van Gogh, isn't it? Where he was trying to show us what was on the inside and what was on the outside were sort of the same. Kind of deep, huh? How you tell this to a kindergartner? I don't know.
Well, you can say, like, have you ever been, you can talk about, like, has there ever been a time when you were sad, but you felt like you needed to not cry?
That's good. And let's not overlook the obvious. We've got Halloween coming next week. So the kids are going to be something different on the outside than what they are on the inside. And we all ask, who am I? No kidding. Halloween, that's the question of the day, isn't it? Who am I? Is it easy to guess who somebody is when what they have on the outside doesn't match what's on the inside? Are you what's on the outside, or are you what's on the inside? All right, this is an unusual piece. This is called The Traveler, and it's by Pierre Eno, who was born in 1909, and he was Russian. I don't know when he died. This piece was done in 1944. So when we look at this, this is actually, he's a surrealist artist. So when we talk about surrealism, we're looking at things that are kind of dreamlike. If you ever pay attention to what your dreams are like, you know what's in them, but they don't always make sense together. And this is an example of that. We have the traveler guy, but there's something that looks like a bird's nest. Now, why is there a bird's nest on the snow in front of him? Don't know. Part of surrealism. And
It looks like a hollowed out tree trunk.
a hollowed out tree trunk, sure. It's something unusual. And it makes me think that something lives there, a bird or an animal. And then because it's called the traveler, it makes me think, okay, who's the traveler? The person hiking or the animal who has stepped away from his home? And why has he stepped away from his home? Is this person looking for animals? Is he hunting? Is he doing a nature walk? We don't know. We really don't know. He's got a basket. He looks like he's looking for something. And of course we have a little bird here who's watching. I'm sure there's a story behind this. And again, we all ask, who am I? This picture doesn't answer it as well as some of the others that we've looked at. Who am I? Again, nothing is in here accidentally, so everything is a clue. The basket that he has, obviously it's important that something goes in there and it opens and closes, so it's something he wants to stay in there once he's filled it. But what is he looking for? I don't know. It's a very stark environment. And the contrast between the wanderer, the hiker person, and the mountains and snow behind him, which are very bleak, tells us a little bit about the picture too. He doesn't look like he's terribly warmly dressed, so I don't think he went too far away from wherever his base is, whether it's a fire or a building. Because, boy, I'd want to be wearing more than that.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, is that a fur inside his belt? Like
Here?
yeah.
Yeah, that kind of looks like a fur. But he's just got on these leather pants, and he's got just a cloak. So I don't know what he's doing. He's got a nice glove here, but no glove there.
Oh, it's the other glove.
Oh, that could be, yeah, the other glove with the fingers. Good call. Good call. Interesting to know what he's doing.
Well, it looks like he took the glove off to, like, reach towards the bird.
Yeah, it does. It does. It says, it says on here that that's a woman.
I wondered.
It looks like a really...
This particular traveler, moving on a landscape that seems both cold and extraterrestrial, is going toward an unknown goal. At her feet is a bird's nest, the home of a snow-white bird perched on a barren branch. The work is an example of the importance of the subconscious or dream mind. What is the quest of this unknown traveler? What is the meaning of the white bird, the only other living thing in this alien landscape? Is her journey a search that many of us in one form or another may undertake? So we are all travelers at some point. If nothing else, we're travelers on Spaceship Earth, aren't we? Hurling through the universe. Some of us have more immediate goals than that. So we can kind of relate to a traveler when we don't really know where she's going or where she came from. We don't know where we're going or where we came from. Most of us. Living lives of ignorant bliss. All right. This is by Oscar Schlemmer, and it's called Scene on the Steps. This is an interesting piece because it's fun to look at. We've got people who are on steps, and we can tell that they're on steps because we can see the handrails. And the handrails are going diagonally, so we know it's kind of a staircase. He's also suggested the staircase with these vertical geometric shapes that kind of look like steps, only they're sideways instead of horizontal, they're up and down, vertical. But he's repeated that step pattern in the background. And when we look at these people, we really don't know where they're going. Are they going up? Are they going down? Are they standing still? It reminds me, you guys are all too young, but downtown Detroit used to have a Hudson's building, and it had it was many, many stories tall, like 11 stories tall, and it had a bank of elevators, and it looked just like this, or the escalators, the stairs, and people would be coming and going up and down these stairs, and this could have been a scene out of that, just people crossing each other, going up, going down. So these people are on a staircase. Obviously, they have a destination in mind. People don't go on staircases without having a destination in mind. So when we say, who am I, what they're asking in this picture really is, where am I going? Am I likely to get there? Do I look like I know where I'm going? We can't really tell a lot about what they're thinking or feeling because they're kind of blank. They're, again, if you go to the mall and you're going up that escalator, you're not thinking about, wow, I'm riding, well, if you're a kid, you are. Kids love escalators, or they're terrified of them. But the adults are just there waiting to get to the destination, to the next floor, to the next store, wherever they're headed, wherever that's carrying them. They don't usually consider the moment of actually being in transit. So we all ask, who am I? Again, sometimes who am I is, as we just saw in the other one too, is dependent a lot on where we are going and how likely we are to get there.
This one always disturbs me, so I can't tell if they're men or women.
Can't tell. You cannot. Schlemmer definitely didn't want to dwell on details that were things like, are you a man or a woman? Are you old? Are you young? None of that is evident from this picture. All we know is that these are people-like beings and that they're moving, they're going somewhere.
Well, their clothing looks more modern than the time frame.
To me, it looks like dancers.
Yeah.
And one of the kids suggested dancers standing at the bar, which I can see where that would be, a legitimate thought. Other than that it's called, people on the steps, seen on the steps.
Yeah, they kind of look like leotards.
They do look like leotards.
Right, it could be dancers going to a studio or something. What
That's
is
true.
the date on, when was this?
This is, good question. Well, he was 1988 to 1943.
Does it say on the front?
Let's take a peek.
Is it 1910?
I don't know if that's a date.
Nope, just his dates.
Oh,
Does it say in the book?
I'll find out.
Not
It does not.
particularly.
Okay, so
We got
probably the
1943,
early
so
20th
before then.
century, I'm going to
Okay.
say. Since he was born in 88, and I think he was probably older than 12 when he painted it. So early 20th century.
This might be kind of like that Art Deco kind of a
Yep, could be.
time
It would certainly looks that style, doesn't it? And our last piece. This is by Henri Rousseau, and it's a self-portrait again. It's from 1890. This is he did a whole bunch of self-portraits, and this is one of them. It says that this is greater than life-size, the greater than life-size figure in the landscape are to be regarded together as the author's attempt to communicate his life. Okay, so like we said earlier, there's nothing in a painting that's put here accidentally. This painting has a whole lot in it, and it all tells us a little something about Rousseau. The self-portrait in here isn't just the person; it's everything around him. That's the story of his life, if you will. So it's got things that were important to him as he was growing up, and as even as he became an old man. It says here his profession, his honors, his hopes for the future. He wears a Rembrandt artist's cap. In his lapel, he has the violet button of the Palme Académique, which is an award that his teacher gave him for drawing. He has inscribed across his palette the names of his wife and daughter. He places himself on a Paris quay, and we may see behind him a row of wine barrels outside a toll house, indicating that he was a douanier, which is a customs official. A sailing ship, also indicative of his profession, and covered with real and imaginary flags of many nations. It's moored by the quay and it becomes part of the view of the bridge that connects this scene with the other aspect of Rousseau's life, the Beaux Arts and Louvre museums. So this really tells us a little bit of everything, and this would be a great project for the kids to do too. They could even bring in a photo of themselves and say, okay, we know this part that's you. Draw the rest of what makes you you. Another good project would be for them to Google ship's flags and see what these flags represent. Some flags spell out letters, some you can do messages and things with flags. So just to find out, are those flags of countries? Are those flags for a flag code, and what is the message? Keeping in mind that it's probably in French. So there's so much. I'm sorry?
Is that a hot air balloon?
A hot air balloon.
Yeah.
Right here? Sure looks like one, doesn't it?
I've never seen it's like must be off in the distance because I've never seen a gray air balloon before.
Looks a little awkward, but
Yeah.
part of it.
I mean, and it kind of looks like you've got the sun showing in the cloud too.
Well, and we see sun reflected on the water, but we don't see one in the sky. There's a lot going on in this picture. And especially the older kids could do this well, to say, okay, show us, in your background, show us things that are important to you. Things that make you, you. If you wanted to ask who is Rousseau, you could look at this picture and say, oh, well, this is what he's like. He's got things hanging in the museums. He is a customs official. His job is near boats on the water, and so on and so on. You could make some pretty accurate guesses even if you didn't know. So it's a pretty cool idea, really. Self-portrait doesn't just mean, as contrasted with the Van Gogh, the bandaged ear. In that picture, the self-portrait is the face, it's the man, it's showing the woundedness. Compare that with his bedroom, which is also a self-portrait. And, hey there. And then this is kind of a combination, isn't it? Because it shows us his environments and the things that are important around him as well as himself.
Yes.
Questions? Comments? Ideas? Thoughts? You came in on the last one.
Well, you know what? I had the time down wrong.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm here.
These things happen. You're here.
I wanted to share something that I had in an experience when I did first and fourth grade.